My name is Madison Clark, and I'm 25. I used to think being the responsible one was a compliment, like I'd been handed some invisible trophy for never causing trouble. My parents loved to tell people, Madison was always our easy child. Easy. Like I came prepackaged with fewer needs. I paid my own car insurance as a teenager, worked part-time through high school, got good grades without being chased. When money was tight, I didn't ask questions. I just quietly covered what I could. Like it was normal for a child to hear the stress in an adult's voice and decide to become smaller so the house could breathe. And then there was my sister Emily. Emily is 21 now, but she's been 21 her whole life. Always the center, always the emergency, always the reason the rules didn't apply. If she wanted something, she didn't want it. She needed it. If she cried, my mother moved mountains. If I stayed silent, everyone assumed I was fine. That pattern started when we were kids. Emily would throw tantrums in the store until she got the toy, and I learned the quickest way out was to say, "It's okay," even when it wasn't. By 10 years old, I'd mastered being agreeable. I didn't know I was training myself to be convenient. High school just made it sharper. When I needed a laptop for school, I saved for months working at a grocery store. Late shifts, aching feet, counting tips like they were oxygen. 2 years later, Emily wanted the same laptop because it was cute, and my parents bought it without hesitation. No saving, no lectures, no, we can't afford it. Just swipe, smile, and my mother's proud little laugh, like Emily had personally invented technology. By college, I was completely self-sufficient. Scholarships, student loans, 2 jobs, a 3.8 GPA that I held onto like a life raft. Sometimes I even sent money home when my parents hinted they were struggling, because guilt has a sound, and my mother's voice had always known how to find it. 2 years ago, when my parents' car was about to be repossessed, they called me crying. Dad sounded humiliated, like the world was personally attacking him. "Just until we get back on our feet," Mom promised. So I added their car loan payment to my life, another $350 a month I didn't really have. I rearranged everything. Groceries, savings, my own plans. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself family helps family. I never saw a cent returned. But even then, I didn't think they'd do what they did next. It started as a routine check. One morning, coffee in hand, I opened my credit card app to make sure everything looked normal. I rarely use that card. I kept it for emergencies, for my credit score, for the kind of adult responsibilities you're supposed to be proud of handling. I expected a small balance. Instead, my heart stopped. A pending charge glared back at me like a threat, $25,000. For a second, my brain refused to translate it. Like if I stared long enough, the number would become something else. $25, maybe? A glitch. A nightmare. I clicked the details with fingers that suddenly didn't feel like mine. Luxury travel agency. My mouth went dry, and immediately, without even trying, I thought of Emily's Instagram. For weeks, she'd been posting about her dream trip, the Maldives, overwater bungalows, private butlers, seaplane transfers, the kind of vacation you see in ads you scroll past because it feels like a different species of life. I'd rolled my eyes at her posts because Emily didn't have money like that. Emily didn't even have consistent money. She cycled through jobs the way some people cycle through outfits, 2 months here, 3 months there, always quitting the second someone expected her to work a Saturday. Yet somehow she always had the newest iPhone, the designer bag, the perfect manicure. I'd assumed the Maldives posts were fantasy, performance, Emily being Emily. But this wasn't fantasy. This was my card, my name, my credit, my life. I sat there staring at that pending charge until the room felt too small. My chest tightened in that way that makes you realize panic isn't just in your head, it's in your body. It's physical, it's real. I knew I hadn't made that purchase. So someone had tried to use my card without permission, and the list of people who had access to my card information was painfully short. 2 years ago, when Dad needed urgent dental work and their credit was maxed out, I gave them my card details for that emergency. I remembered Mom's voice back then, soft and grateful. "We'll never forget this, Maddie." I believed her. I never imagined they'd kept the information. Never imagined they'd treat my emergency-only kindness like a permanent permission slip. I didn't even let myself hesitate. I called the credit card company. When the representative asked, "Would you like to report this as fraud?" my throat tightened so hard it hurt. Fraud. Technically, yes, but saying it out loud Felt like stepping over a line I couldn't come back from. Reporting your own parents doesn't feel like a normal adult task. It feels like betrayal, even when they're the ones betraying you. Freeze the card, I said, voice shaking. Cancel the transaction, immediately. She was efficient, calm, like this was just another Tuesday, like families didn't come with teeth. When I hung up, the silence in my apartment felt loud. I stared at my phone, waiting for the world to rearrange itself, waiting for my body to stop buzzing. It didn't. My phone lit up. A message from Ethan. Ethan is my boyfriend. Steady, quiet, the kind of man who listens like he's actually hearing the words, and not just waiting for his turn to talk. I hadn't told him yet. I was still trying to hold the panic in my own 2 hands. You okay? You've been quiet all morning. I stared at the screen, and something inside me cracked. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just a small break in the dam. I typed, "Something's wrong," like, really wrong. He called instantly. "Madison," he said the moment I answered, and the way he said my name, like he could feel the tremor in it, made my eyes burn. What happened? I told him. The charge, the travel agency, the number that didn't feel real. He didn't interrupt, just breathed with me through it. When I finished, he said, "You did the right thing freezing it." "But it's my parents," I whispered, like that explained everything, like that made it complicated in a way the world would understand. "It being your parents is exactly why you had to," he said gently. "They don't get to gamble with your life because they're family." I swallowed hard. My hands were still trembling. I don't even know how to confront them. "You don't have to do it alone," Ethan said. "I can come over." "I'm fine," I lied automatically, because being fine was my oldest skill. Ethan didn't let it slide. "Madison, you're not fine, and you don't have to be." Before I could answer, my phone pinged again. This time it was Emily. My stomach clenched, like my body knew what my mind hadn't seen yet. I opened the message. A selfie. Emily wearing oversized sunglasses and a floppy hat, standing in what looked like a boutique changing room, surrounded by bright lights and shopping bags. "Getting my vacay wardrobe ready, so excited for the Maldives next week. Sucks you can't afford nice trips like this. Maybe someday when you're not so boring and actually live a little." I stared at the screen until the words blurred. There it was. The casual cruelty, the entitlement, the certainty that the world existed to give her what she wanted, and if it didn't, someone else would pay. Emily had no idea the charge had been canceled. She had no idea her dream vacation was being funded by stealing from me, and she was mocking me while doing it. I didn't respond. I didn't give her the satisfaction of my anger. I didn't give her anything. But inside, something shifted. It wasn't just rage. It was clarity. My phone rang. Mom's name flashed across the screen. I didn't even have time to inhale before I answered, because some part of me still believed I had to. Because I was the easy child, the fixer, the one who cleaned up messes. The sound that came through the phone was not a greeting. It was a scream. "Madison!" I pulled the phone away from my ear. "How could you?" she shrieked. "The travel agency just called. Emily's payment was declined. Her trip is ruined. She's devastated." I waited a beat, letting her run out of oxygen. Then I said calmly, "What happened?" "You canceled it," Mom snapped. "You canceled the payment. Do you have any idea what you've done?" My voice stayed steady even though my heart was pounding. "Yeah, I canceled my credit card." There was a short, stunned silence, like she couldn't compute that my money belonged to me. "What do you mean you canceled it?" she demanded. I glanced at the screenshot again, the $25,000 number like a slap. I froze the card because someone tried to charge $25,000 without my permission. Mom's breath came sharp and angry. "We needed that for Emily's trip." That sentence landed heavier than the scream. "We needed that. Not asked for it. Not borrowed it. Not can we please talk. Needed. Like my boundaries were a minor inconvenience." "Why were you even using my card?" I asked. Silence. Then Mom's voice softened into that familiar tone. Sweet, wounded, practiced. "We were going to pay you back." I laughed once, short and bitter, like my body did it before I could stop it. "Oh, really?" I said. "When? With what money? The same money you've been going to pay me back with for 2 years?" Her voice sharpened again. "Madison, don't do this. Emily deserves this trip. You know how hard she's had it lately." Hard. Emily. I almost choked. Before I could respond, another voice cut in. Deeper, colder. "Dad." He must have grabbed the phone. "Madison," he said, using that tone from my childhood, the one that expected instant obedience. "You better fix this right now." Fix it. Like I was a service department. Like I existed to smooth the world for them. My fingers tightened around the phone. I could hear Ethan still on my other line, silent now, listening. Fix what? I asked, voice rising. The fact that you stole my card information? The fact that you tried to spend $25,000 of my money without asking me? Dad's voice hardened. Watch your mouth. Watch my mouth, I repeated, disbelief turning my anger sharp. You used my credit card like it was yours. You didn't ask. You didn't warn me. You didn't even apologize. And now you're yelling at me because I stopped you. Mom jumped back in, crying now, on cue. We raised you. We gave you everything. That line used to work. It used to fold me in half with guilt. But today it sounded like a receipt. You didn't ask for help, I said, voice shaking despite myself. You took. And this isn't the first time. I paid for Dad's dental emergency. I've been paying your car loan. I've helped with bills when you hinted. When does it end? Mom sniffed dramatically. We've always treated you girls equally. Something in me snapped at the word equally. Name one time, I said. Just one. Silence again. Thicker this time. Because there wasn't one. They couldn't name it because it didn't exist. My chest felt tight, but my voice stayed steady. I'm done, I said, and I didn't even recognize how calm I sounded. I'm done being your solution. I'm done being the family ATM. Dad started shouting. Mom started crying louder. Emily's name became a weapon thrown at me like I was supposed to flinch. I didn't. I hung up. I sat there for a moment, staring at the blank screen, listening to my own breathing like I was meeting myself for the first time. Then I opened my banking app, and with fingers that no longer shook, I canceled the next car loan payment I'd been making for them. One click, one boundary, one quiet decision that I knew, deep down, was going to start a war. The silence after I canceled the car payment didn't last long. It never does. At first, it was subtle. My phone lighting up with unfamiliar numbers I ignored. Messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years asking, hey, are you okay? Or heard some stuff, just checking in. By noon, subtle turned into obvious. My cousin texted me first. Why would you do that to Emily? She's been crying all morning. I stared at the message, my jaw tight. No question, no curiosity, just an accusation dressed up as concern. Then my uncle called. Madison, he said, sighing like I was already exhausting him. Your parents are heartbroken. This isn't how family treats each other. I almost laughed. Family hadn't treated me like family in years, but somehow that never seemed to matter. By mid-afternoon, I realized what was happening. They weren't just angry. They were rewriting the story. I opened Facebook and felt my stomach drop. My mother had posted a long emotional status. No names, of course, just implication. It breaks my heart when you sacrifice everything for your children, only to be abandoned when you need them most. I never thought I'd see the day when money mattered more than family. The comments poured in. Stay strong, Mama. Kids these days don't know loyalty. Praying for your family. I scrolled, numb. 10 minutes later, Emily posted. A black background, white text. Dramatic, curated. It's wild how toxic people can pretend to love you until they don't get to control you anymore. Protect your peace, even from blood. She followed it with another post. Mental health matters. Being around unstable people can be scary. Unstable. Dangerous. That was the word she wanted out there. My phone buzzed again. This time from a childhood friend I hadn't seen in years. I heard you're not doing well. If you need help, please reach out. Help! Like I was unraveling. Like I'd snapped. I set my phone down and pressed my palms into my eyes, trying to slow my breathing. The room felt tilted, like the ground beneath me had quietly shifted while I wasn't looking. They weren't just mad that I said no. They were punishing me for it. Ethan came over that evening. He didn't knock, just let himself in with the spare key I'd given him months ago, back when my life felt simpler. He took one look at my face and pulled me into his arms. I didn't cry. I just stood there, stiff at first, then slowly let myself lean into him like I'd forgotten how to rest my weight on another person. They're destroying you online, he said softly, after I showed him the posts. I didn't even say anything, I whispered. I didn't post. I didn't explain. I just stopped paying. And that was enough, he replied. That night, the messages kept coming. Relatives I barely remembered weighing in on my character. Old acquaintances suddenly experts on family loyalty. People who had never asked me how I was when I was juggling 2 jobs and tuition now had strong opinions about my morality. What hurt the most wasn't the anger. It was the certainty. They believed my parents. They believed Emily, because I'd always been quiet, always agreeable, always the one who didn't make scenes. So when the scene finally happened, it couldn't possibly be my parents' fault. It had to be me. The next morning, things escalated again. A coworker pulled me aside at the office, voice hesitant. Hey, I don't want to pry, but are you okay? Someone mentioned you've been dealing with family stuff. My heart dropped. They'd crossed a line. This wasn't just personal anymore. This was my job, my reputation, my livelihood. I locked myself in a bathroom stall and stared at my reflection, barely recognizing the woman looking back at me. I looked tired, older, like I'd been carrying something heavy for too long and it was finally crushing my spine. That was when I realized something terrifying and clarifying all at once. This wasn't about the money anymore. This was about control, and they were willing to burn my life down to get it back. That night, after hours of screenshots and saving messages, I sat on my couch with my laptop open and typed one sentence into a search bar. Family financial fraud lawyer. My hands shook as I hit enter. I wasn't trying to hurt them. I was trying to survive them. Ethan sat beside me, quiet, steady, steady. Once you do this, he said gently, they're not going to stop. They'll get worse. I nodded. I know. And you still want to? I thought about Emily's text, my mother's post, my father's threats, my coworker's concerned look. I thought about all the years I'd paid in silence. Yes, I said, I have to. I didn't know it yet, but the moment I made that decision, something else started to unravel. Because my parents weren't the only ones spreading the story. And soon, I was going to find out just how far the lies had traveled. The lawyer's office smelled like stale coffee and disinfectant. Neutral, impersonal, like a place designed to absorb other people's messes. Which I guess it was. I sat across from her with my laptop open, scrolling through screenshots while she took notes. Credit card statements, bank transfers, messages from my parents that swung wildly between guilt and rage. Emily's posts, my mother's carefully worded Facebook monologues, the comments, the timestamps. She didn't interrupt. When I finally stopped talking, my voice hoarse, she leaned back slightly and said, "This isn't a misunderstanding." The words landed heavier than I expected. "This is a pattern," she continued. "Unauthorized use of your credit card, ongoing financial support with no repayment, defamation, and possibly identity misuse." Possibly. That word echoed in my head. I signed the paperwork with hands that felt strangely calm, like my body had already decided the path, even if my heart was still catching up. When the legal notice went out, I expected panic. What I didn't expect was speed. Less than 2 hours after my parents were officially served, my phone exploded. Blocked numbers found new ways in. Emails I hadn't seen in years suddenly came alive. My father left a voicemail so furious his voice cracked halfway through. "You've gone too far," he shouted. "You think you're smarter than us? You think a piece of paper makes you right?" My mother posted a video that same night. Tear-streaked face, quivering voice, perfect lighting. She didn't say my name, but she didn't have to. She talked about heartbreak, about betrayal, about a daughter who was clearly unwell and lashing out, about how painful it was to watch someone you love spiral. The comments were brutal. "Praying for you. Some kids are just ungrateful. She needs help." Emily followed up with messages directly to me. Paragraphs, walls of text. She called me selfish, jealous, cold. She said I'd ruined her life, humiliated her, embarrassed the family. She accused me of wanting her to suffer because I'd always hated her happiness. I blocked her. Then I sat there, staring at my phone, waiting for the relief everyone says comes when you finally stand up for yourself. It didn't come. What came instead was grief. Not loud, not dramatic, just a dull ache, like realizing the house you grew up in was never really safe. You just learned how to walk quietly through it. Ethan noticed before I said anything. "You're pulling away," he said one night as we sat on opposite ends of the couch. "I don't want this to spill onto you," I replied. "My family, they poison everything they touch." "That's their choice," he said, "not yours." I wanted to believe him, but doubt crept in anyway, because doubt was familiar, because a part of me still feared I was too much, too complicated, too damaged. And then there was Brielle, Ethan's ex-girlfriend. She'd never been openly hostile to me. Polite smiles, casual hellos at group gatherings, the kind of woman who claimed she hated drama while always standing close enough to feel the heat. A few days after the lawsuit news spread, Ethan got a message from her. "Hey, I heard what Madison's going through. Just wanted to say I'm worried about you. That situation sounds intense." Worried about him. I didn't say anything at first. I didn't want to be paranoid, didn't want to become the stereotype my family was already pushing. But then things started repeating. Stories Ethan told me he'd shared privately about my stress, my anxiety, my exhaustion, somehow found their way back to me through other people. "Oh, I heard you're not handling things well," someone said casually. Must be hard on Ethan, another added. The words felt familiar. Curated. Selective. One night, Ethan handed me his phone without a word. A screenshot. Brielle had messaged someone else. Someone who knew both of us. I'm honestly scared for Ethan. Madison seems really unstable lately. I hope he's safe. My chest went cold. She wasn't trying to get Ethan back. She was trying to paint me as the problem, as the reason things felt tense, as the threat. And suddenly, everything clicked. My family wasn't alone in this narrative. They had help. Quiet help, convenient help. People who benefited from chaos. I didn't confront her. I didn't post. I didn't explode. I saved everything. Because at this point, I wasn't reacting anymore. I was documenting. My lawyer warned me the next phase would be worse. Once discovery starts, she said, people like this panic, and panic makes them sloppy. I didn't realize how sloppy until the subpoenas went out. Because when the financial records came back, they didn't just confirm what I suspected. They revealed something that made my stomach drop straight through the floor. Something that turned years of confusion into one clear, horrifying pattern. And once I saw it, there was no unseeing it. The email from my lawyer came in at 9:12 a.m. We received the records. That was it. No emojis, no softening language, just a sentence that felt heavier than anything my parents had ever said to me. I didn't open the attachment right away. I sat at my desk staring at the screen, my coffee untouched, my inbox blurred around the edges. A strange fear settled in. Not the fear of being wrong, but the fear of being right. Because if the record showed what my lawyer suspected, then this wasn't just about one stolen charge or one ruined vacation. It was about my entire life being quietly mined for resources. I opened the files. Page after page scrolled past. Bank statements, credit histories, transaction logs. At first, it was exactly what we expected. Proof that my parents weren't struggling the way they'd claimed. Proof that while I was covering their car loan, they were spending freely. Thousands of dollars on luxury items. Designer bags, spa memberships, weekend getaways, expensive dinners, all for Emily. I felt sick. Every time I'd skipped something for myself, every time I'd told myself next year, they were swiping without hesitation. But then I reached a section labeled Historical Credit Activity, and my breath caught. There it was, a small loan taken out in my name, dated 4 years ago, during my sophomore year of college. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding so loudly I thought I might pass out. I hadn't taken out that loan. I knew exactly where I was when it happened. Working a double shift, studying for midterms, barely sleeping. I remembered that year clearly because it was brutal, because I'd nearly dropped out from exhaustion. And yet somehow a loan existed under my name, my social security number, my signature, close enough to pass, but not quite right. They had used information from forms I'd signed years earlier, emergency paperwork, financial aid documents they'd helped me fill out. I felt something inside me fracture, not shatter, not explode, just quietly give way. This wasn't carelessness. This wasn't desperation. This was entitlement. They hadn't just crossed a line once. They'd built a home on the other side of it. I closed my laptop and pressed my palms against my eyes, breathing through the nausea. The room felt distant, like I was underwater. Ethan came home early that day. He found me sitting on the floor, back against the couch, files spread around me like evidence markers at a crime scene. They did it, I said before he could ask. My voice sounded hollow, like it didn't quite belong to me anymore. They used my name, years ago. I didn't even know. He sat down slowly, careful, like I might break if he moved too fast. I'm so sorry, he said. That was it. No fixing, no rationalizing, just acknowledgement. And somehow that hurt and healed at the same time. My parents' attorney reached out 2 days later. The tone was different now, less threatening, more urgent. They wanted to resolve things quietly. They offered a settlement, repayment of the car loan payments I'd covered, plus an agreement to stop posting about me online. In exchange, I'd drop the lawsuit and sign a non-disclosure agreement. An NDA. Silence purchased. I read the email twice before forwarding it to my lawyer with one line. No, we countered. Full repayment of everything I'd given them. A formal retraction of the defamatory statements. No NDA. No silence. They rejected it within hours. Of course they did. Because apologizing publicly would mean admitting they were wrong. And my parents would rather burn everything than do that. Around the same time, something else surfaced. One of Ethan's friends, someone I barely knew, sent me a message. Hey, I didn't know if you were aware, but Brielle's been telling people you're unstable. Like, dangerous unstable. I stared at the words, feeling oddly calm. I'd already suspected. Now I had confirmation. Instead of confronting her, I did what I'd learned to do best over the last few weeks. I documented screenshots, dates, witness names, messages forwarded quietly by people who were starting to realize something wasn't adding up. By the time my lawyer added Brielle's statements to the growing file, it wasn't even surprising anymore. It was just more proof of the same truth. When people lose control over you, they don't ask what they did wrong. They ask how to destroy your credibility. The court date was set. Seeing it written there, a real date, a real room, a real judge, made everything suddenly feel terrifyingly concrete. I would have to sit across from my parents. I would have to hear them lie. I would have to speak. Some nights I lay awake, replaying imagined cross-examinations, my stomach twisting. Other nights, I felt strangely peaceful, like the decision had already been made, and all that remained was to walk through it. On the morning before the hearing, my phone buzzed with a text from my grandmother. "Please, Madison, drop this. You're tearing the family apart." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I set the phone face down. For the first time, I didn't respond. Because the family they were mourning, the obedient, silent version of me, was already gone. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not just the temperature. Everything about it felt stripped of comfort. Hard benches, pale walls, fluorescent lights that didn't care who you were or why you were there. This wasn't a place for emotion. It was a place for facts. My parents sat across the room from me. They didn't look at me at first. My mother kept her eyes down, hands folded tightly in her lap like she was praying. My father stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, wearing the same expression he'd worn my entire childhood whenever he believed authority would save him. Emily sat behind them. She looked bored. That hurt more than anything else. When the judge entered, everyone stood. The room settled into silence so deep I could hear my own heartbeat. Opening statements began. My lawyer spoke calmly, methodically, laying out the timeline. The unauthorized credit card charge, the years of financial support, the car payments, the discovery of the loan in my name, the smear campaign, the defamation, the emotional distress. No embellishment, no dramatics, just truth. Then my parents' attorney stood. He smiled gently at the judge, warm, practiced. He framed everything as a misunderstanding, a breakdown in communication, a family dispute that had spiraled unnecessarily. According to him, I had verbally agreed to help pay for Emily's Maldives trip as a graduation gift. According to him, my parents had acted in good faith. According to him, I was overreacting. I felt Ethan's hands squeeze mine under the table. My mother was called to testify. She spoke softly, carefully, like every word was wrapped in tissue paper. She talked about sacrifices, about love, about how she'd never intentionally hurt her daughter. Then my lawyer stood up. "Did you ask Madison Clark for permission to use her credit card for the Maldives trip?" My mother hesitated. "No," she admitted. "Did you inform her before charging $25,000? Another pause. "No." "Did you apologize when she confronted you?" Silence. "No," she said again, barely audible. That was it. No yelling, no tears. Just 3 small answers that collapsed their entire story. My father fared worse. When the recorded voicemail of him threatening me was played, his face went red. He shifted in his seat, visibly uncomfortable, like the sound of his own voice offended him. Then it was my turn. I stood slowly, legs unsteady but determined. I told the truth. I talked about being self-sufficient since I was a teenager, about paying my own way through school, about covering their emergencies, about adding their car loan to my monthly expenses when they promised it was temporary. I described opening my credit card app and seeing the $25,000 charge, the panic, the betrayal, the realization that my kindness had been treated like an entitlement. When their lawyer tried to paint me as cold, asked why I wouldn't just help family, I met his gaze. "Refusing to have my money taken without permission isn't cruelty," I said. "It's a boundary." The judge called a recess. 2 hours. 2 hours of waiting in a hallway that smelled like old paper and anxiety. 2 hours of my mind racing through worst-case scenarios. 2 hours of wondering if I'd somehow failed to explain myself clearly enough. When we were called back in, the room felt heavier. The judge didn't waste time. She ruled in my favor, on every count. Unauthorized use of my credit card, defamation, emotional distress. She ordered my parents to repay $15,273.42 plus interest. She granted a temporary restraining order, preventing them from contacting my workplace or posting defamatory content about me. My parents looked stunned. Not angry, not sad. Stunned. like they truly believed this would end differently. As we left the courtroom, I waited for the rush of victory everyone talks about. It didn't come. What came instead was grief. Grief for the family I'd tried so hard to be worthy of. Grief for the years I'd spent believing love had to be earned through sacrifice. I didn't look back, because the verdict had already said everything I needed to hear. After the ruling, everything went quiet. No calls, no vague posts, no late-night messages dripping with guilt or rage. My parents complied. Within the 30-day deadline, the money appeared in my account. Every cent the court ordered, down to the last decimal. The defamatory posts vanished. The comments disappeared. The narrative they'd spun so carefully evaporated overnight, like it had never existed. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'd lived my whole life bracing for the next crisis, the next accusation, the next demand disguised as love. Silence felt unfamiliar, almost suspicious. I checked my phone more than I needed to, half expecting a new number, a loophole, another attempt to pull me back into orbit. It never came. And slowly something strange happened. I started breathing again. Without the constant drain of supporting my parents and cleaning up Emily's messes, my finances stabilized for the first time ever. I stopped living in just get through this month mode. I got a promotion at work, one I'd been quietly overdue for, according to my manager. I opened a savings account that didn't immediately terrify me. 3 months later, I put down a deposit on a small condo. I stood in the empty living room after signing the papers, sunlight spilling across bare floors, and laughed out loud, not because it was luxurious, not because it was impressive, but because it was mine. Ethan moved through the aftermath with me carefully, like he understood I was relearning how to exist without armor. There were moments I pulled away, old instincts flaring, the fear of being a burden whispering in my ear. Each time he met me where I was. "You don't have to earn being loved," he told me one night when I finally said it out loud. "You already are." That sentence undid something in me. I started therapy soon after. The therapist gave it a name within the first few sessions: financial abuse. She talked about patterns, about how responsibility can be weaponized against the person who carries it, about how some families don't want equality, they want access. Naming it didn't make it hurt less, but it made it real. And real things can be healed. I stopped explaining myself to people who'd already decided who I was. Some drifted away, others quietly apologized months later when the truth became harder to ignore. I accepted the apologies that felt sincere and let the rest go without ceremony. Emily never reached out, neither did my parents. And for the first time, that absence didn't feel like loss. It felt like space. Space to build a life that didn't revolve around fixing, sacrificing, shrinking. It asked to be a woman instead of a solution. Sometimes I still think about the girl I was, the one who learned early that being easy kept the peace. I wish I could tell her that peace built on silence isn't peace at all. It's erasure. Walking away wasn't about abandoning my family. It was about choosing myself. And I've never been more at peace than I am now, living on my own terms, free from the cycles that once defined me. Sometimes the family we're born into isn't the family we deserve. And sometimes the bravest thing we can do is let go.